In solo leveling Ragnarok, the one who has taken over the universe and the position of an absolute god is the Shadow Lord Sung Jinwoo. Yet, even after amassing this much power to rule the whole universe, Jinwoo still can't rest with his family because the outer gods of the other universes have just declared war. So in this video, I'm going to reveal the true secrets behind the gods of solo leveling, explaining each and every one of them, from the monarchs, rulers, angels, and even the new apostles from Ragnarok. Because literally just a few months ago in the new Ragnarok chapters, we witnessed Jinwoo fighting in the war against the other universes, while his son Suho is busy catching monarchs like they are Pokemon to help his dad during the final battle. But to understand how we even ended up here, I need to take you guys to the dawn of time. Here, a race of beings known as the Etrums dwell. These are a group of creators who hold dominion over the multiverse, with each having similar amounts of mana and power, so they would create their own universes for the sake of entertainment, as fighting each other wasn't an option. One of these Etrums created the dimension solo leveling takes place in. This guy was the strongest individual in his universe, being the creator of everything including planets and humans. In fact, the tablet Jinwoo found in the double dungeon reflects this, as it says that one must worship the god, praise the god, and prove your piety since he was so powerful. Keep this information in mind because I will explain how this was a tactic by the Absolute Ones to keep control over their children. Because if they figured out their god's true intentions, it's kinda GG. Let me explain. Despite being a holy entity, one that created everything from nothing, the Absolute Being was, in all honesty, a terrible existence, as he watched his children brutally murder each other, simply consuming it as peak fiction. After coming to this realization about their creator, the rulers begged him to end this eternal war against the monarchs, but this only made the truth even clearer, that this eternal war would never end as long as their creator was alive, and so 7 of the 8 rulers rebelled and killed him. Now, you might think this guy is a pushover because of this, but he's a god for a reason. He's rivaled only by the other members of his race and could create an organic life out of nothing. Like, bro created time in the universe, alright? He was also the one who forged the Cup of Reincarnation, an artifact that's able to reset time of this dimension. Now, that begs the question, how the f did he lose? Well, despite his insane stats, this dude was seemingly unable to actually use any of it in battle. Meaning, he was just some guy sitting on a throne waiting to be killed. Him being a god didn't mean he had infinite power. The restriction placed upon all his creations was ultimately forced upon himself too. Another factor which contributed to his death is that bro had used most of his mana and power to give birth to the universe. Now, this isn't explicitly confirmed in Ragnarok or OG solo leveling, but using my balls deep hunter sense, I think I've pieced it all together through the lore behind the world tree we learned in Ragnarok chapter 230. The world tree is an enormous godly existence that takes root in the sea of the afterlife, with its branches extending across the entire universe. Anteres explains it as existing everywhere but nowhere at the same time, because the universe itself rests upon it. It's like asking where your house is located inside your own house. The world tree also serves as a bridge between dimensions, connecting different realms like the demon realm or the land of the elves. But that's not all, as one of its key functions is to influence the cycle of souls and power throughout the universe. The Absolute One planted the tree to maintain balance for the universe. Think of it like a motherboard for a computer. Everything else rests upon it. That's why the outer gods are fighting to find Jinwoo's universe's world tree, as most of the power of the Absolute One is there. Just for perspective, the fruits from the world tree are a key ingredient to the creation of angels who help the rulers fight in their war against the monarchs and are currently aiding Jinwoo and his shadow army in the Etrum War. However, after the Absolute One's death, the world tree stopped producing these angels. The roots of the tree also absorb souls to help grow and sustain a cosmic balance. So if you're wondering how is the universe of solo leveling still functioning if their god is dead, well, it's because Jinwoo understands the importance of the world tree and is busy protecting it. Also, you know the mechanic of a second reawakening? reawakening? Well, that is usually caused by someone stumbling upon the world tree while they are suffering from sleeping sickness. For example, Seo Jiwoo encountered the world tree in a dream, which led to her reawakening as an S-class hunter. The coolest part about the world tree though is that the system Jinwoo and the architect Kandiaru developed, the core power might be stemming from this tree, especially the ability longevity or the many potions of instant recovery sold in the shop. We learned this during Suho's battle with another entity that exists in the Sea of the Afterlife, Nidhogg, where Suho eats a mere leaf of the world tree, causing him to instantly go to max HP. This Nidhogg is a giant serpent which feeds on the world tree and protects it. It is created from the aspects of the primordial darkness. However, after Suho and Esil's battle with the entity, it only has 6 heads, as Esil devoured one of them, becoming a new monarch. But I will dive deeper into this later in the video as I explain every monarch. The most important one I want to focus on right now though is the original Shadow Monarch, Ashborn. After the death of the Absolute Being, the Eternal War didn't end. In fact, it only escalated through the creation of the new strongest entity in existence, one that could actually utilize his insane powers in battle. He was originally one of the 8 rulers, the only one to not rebel against their god, and in his attempt to stop his brethren, he was easily defeated and left for dead. In his last moments of life, the Absolute Being revealed he had hidden the strongest power inside his body, activating it. This power is most likely the aspect of death, which grants Ashborn dominion over the Shadow Realm, or the ability to arise the fallen as his own minion. This power transformed Ashborn into a large, muscular entity with black armor and purple flames. Ashborn then joined the monarchs, completely turning the tide of the war. The only problem was that Ashborn was a little way too strong, to the point where it didn't even matter what side he was on, as both feared him, resulting in one of the monarchs betraying him and forcing Ashborn to kill them. After this, the war took a massive turn, leading to the rulers coming to Ashborn asking for forgiveness, and despite refusing their pleas, begged to let them kill him. Why? Because he was too strong and his death could bring back that balance they wanted. This left Ashborn so emotionally distraught that he left to rebuild his army, allowing the rulers to finally achieve a full victory. But we know the monarchs spent the next however many centuries plotting their inevitable resurgence, as Ashborn joined them in their assault on the human world. Now, while the other monarchs were there to kill, destroy, and rebuild their armies, Ashborn used this opportunity to find his place in the multiverse, never feeling like he truly belonged to the chaos world like his brethren. So even after the rulers kept resetting time with the Cup of Reincarnation, Ashborn continued to look for a suitable vessel from Kandiaru, aka the Architect, who agrees to aid him in exchange for immortality, creating a system designed specifically to cultivate Ashborn's new vessel. And he found it with none other than Sung Jinwoo. However, Kandiaru had thought the new Shadow Monarch was a vessel for Ashborn to take over. In actuality, Jinwoo was more of a successor or son, where he would inherit Ashborn's powers and evolve into his own separate god. Now, I keep referring to all these monarchs and rulers as gods, but in reality, they are apostles of the Etrum, basically demigods who hold immense primordial power. Any entity in the story who is at this cosmic level, I'm going to cover them in this video, as they are gods in their own right. The only one whom I guess even has the right to take up the role of the universal god would be Jinwoo currently, as he has no other counterpart. Coming back to Ashborn though, Bruz just kinda chilled inside of Jinwoo as he became stronger, serving as a sort of a pseudo mentor and audience's way of learning about the Great War. He was a plot device. I'm being generous here, right? In reality, he's not a major player in Solo Leveling's main story and more of a means to an end. Without him, Jinwoo would have never become the strongest hunter. I saw everybody say, thank you, Ashborn. Good job. I like the video. Another monarch who helped Jinwoo and even his son become stronger is Ashborn's #1 op, Baran of the White Flames, or the Demon King monarch. He originates from the void or the gap, meaning he exists outside of life and death because the Absolute One discarded him and the demon race during creation. So they roamed around this plane between universes. That's why the demons never truly die. Upon death, their their spirit lingers, trying to find a new vessel to come back to, after which they lose the old memories of theirs. Baran existed in a state of nothingness in the gap, unable to live or die in the universe unless torn apart or completely destroyed. Before becoming the Monarch of White Flames and the Demon King, bro was just trying to survive, as in the gap, it's kind of like a battle royale. If you can't consume the other residents, you get devoured instead. And the more you consume, the stronger you become. As you keep eating, you become a stronger demon and eventually ascend to the throne to be ordained as the Demon King. Before Baran, there was another Demon King and Demon Monarch. However, after his death during the eternal war against the rulers, the trial of the Demon King began once more, where only the strongest demon noble could claim this title. It was Baran who grasped this empty throne by using his Hell's Army ability, which is a degraded version of the Shadow Monarch's own ability. Through Hell's Army, Baran gains absolute control over all demons and can summon them at will. However, after Ashborn's rise, Baran started to develop an inferiority complex due to this very fact. So he had no issue turning on Ashborn despite all the help he offered to the Monarch's side. When Baran attacked Ashborn alongside the beast, he was already severely weakened due to killing several ruler soldiers. But his Hell's Army couldn't match against the Shadow Monarch, leading to his demise. Furthermore, Baran was completely played here because Anteres, the strongest monarch, used Baran to try and gauge Ashborn as he was afraid of the Shadow Lord's overwhelming power. And so, Baran died an absolute bum, his skull being crushed with one hand. To put even more disrespect on this guy, Kandiyaru uses him as a boss within the system, being the final adversary jinwoo has to fight inside the S-rank Demon Castle dungeon. At the 100th floor, there was a random-ass clone. He was like, oh, I was once a great god equipped with the Mount Kaisil and the massive dragon. However, we get to witness the true power of Baran in solo leveling Ragnarok, because due to being a resident of the gap, Baran never truly died. After his death, Baran found himself in a void-like realm, which was the Sea of Afterlife. Here, his access to the living world was cut off, and all bro could do was crash out against Ashborn and Anteres for their betrayal. Even his Hell's Army summoning ability was of no use because he couldn't gain access to the demons of the universe. Instead, it gathered demons that were already trapped in the gap, creating a sanctuary of demons. Baran began devouring weaker demons, regaining his lost strength and transforming back into the king of demons. However, when Suho entered the Sea of the Afterlife, he accidentally triggered Baran's full resurrection. While exploring the afterlife, Suho came into contact with Baran's demons. This interaction somehow resonated with Baran's lingering consciousness, awakening him from dormancy. Basically, bro was so angry at Ashborn Anteres. He was like, when Suho showed up with having the Shadow Lord's power and having Anteres' destruction power, he was like, whoa, what the f is this shit? And he just pops out like, oh man. Even Anteres, he was like surprised and confused, like, how is this even possible, bruh? This suggests that Baran's revival wasn't a conventional resurrection, but rather a reawakening triggered by Suho. As soon as Baran saw Suho, he was filled with hate because inside Suho, he sensed both Anteres and Ashborn's energy. He saw Suho as the descendant of both of his greatest enemies, leading him to unleash his white flame ability, which was way too fast for even Suho to react again. Suho was struggling like crazy. He couldn't even summon his shadow soldiers in this dimension, neither could he gain access to potions. In his desperation, Suho had to rely on the other monarchs who teamed up with him to lend him power. He used the Fang's speed, the blizzard of the frost to slow Baran, and the poison of the plague to inflict damage. And if you're wondering how the hell does Suho even have access to all these monarch powers, like, is he the monarch of everything? I'll get to that later in the video. Stay tuned, because this shit's crazy. Baran was way too strong, especially when he activated his doppelganger ability, literally transforming and inheriting Suho's powers. Suho had a trump card. At that moment, a quest notification appeared, instructing Suho to use the power of destruction to burn Baran's soul away. So he unleashed Breath of Destruction, burning Baran with Anteres' flames, which literally erases you from reality. Being the third strongest monarch after Ashborn and Anteres, Baran wasn't going down that easily though. But Suho then used his own Shadow Monarch abilities and extracted all the shadows of Baran's demons. Seeing this, Baran screamed in agony, witnessing him being defeated by Ashborn and Anteres' powers once again. However, Baran's destruction laid the foundation for another monarch to be born, the demon monarch of Gluttony, Esil Radiru. In solo leveling Ragnarok, after Jinwoo left 5 years ago to fight against the monarchs, the demon realm was in tatters. The Radiru family was completely decimated without the Shadow Lord's protection, where the only surviving demon noble was Esil, and she would find her way to Suho's party as a valuable addition. But being the only demon noble meant that she was the closest candidate to also inheriting the demon monarch's power. First, Esil became the queen of the demons after Suho and her helped defeat the tyrant who was using Itrum's power to subjugate the demon clan. Next, after Baran's death, Suho took the horn of Baran and handed it to Esil, declaring her the new demon king. The moment Esil accepted the horn, black energy surrounded her, initiating a deadly succession trial. This was Baran's final test. If Esil was unworthy, the horn would consume her soul instead. Instantly, Esil's mind was sucked into the abyss, where she saw the world tree growing at the edge of the afterlife. She realized her failure as a demon queen in her first attempt. Basically, she was second guessing herself and nearly lost herself to the abyss. However, her husband, Suho, forcibly pulled her back, saving her from destruction and allowing her to complete the transformation. Instead of inheriting Baran's title as the Monarch of White Flames, Esil evolved into something new, the Monarch of Gluttony. This title suited her insatiable hunger and ability to absorb power. After ascending, she immediately swore loyalty to Suho, granting him a 300% experience boost as her blessing. With her newfound power, Esil united the demon world, rallying them against the outer gods. Currently, her mission is to free the demon world, as she recognized that it was like a giant prison, forcing demons to fight endlessly. But Esil's true transformation into a monarch only happened after she consumed the primordial darkness within one of the heads of Nidhogg, as I mentioned earlier, which has led to her complete evolution into the new demon monarch. And since she has sworn loyalty to Suho, he has access to her monarch powers also. Yeah, I wasn't lying when I said Suho was collecting all the monarchs as Pokemon, alright? Another monarch who has given his blessing to Suho is the Fang Lord Rakan. He was one of the original monarchs, ruling over all beast-type creatures. He embodies pure instinct, strength, and the law of the jungle, where only the strongest survive. Unlike some other monarchs, Rakan did not rely on deception or schemes. He was a warrior through and through. Rakan spends most of the story prepping for the monarch's next war with the rulers, hunting down anyone strong enough to stand in his way, like the world's third strongest national level hunter, Christopher Reed, who is jumped by 3 monarchs including Rakan. Sadly, the battle was off screen. But don't count Rakan off, as he possesses immense physical strength, being able to fight evenly with Thomas Andre while holding back. This is the strongest hunter in the entire world besides Jinwoo at that time. He's also fast enough to keep up with our Shadow Monarch during their battle without much effort. But after Wu gains 100% of Ashborn's power, he 3-shots Rakan. Yet despite Rakan being this malicious beast, he's actually a caring father, as this leads us to solo leveling Ragnarok. You see, after Jinwoo's son Suho takes down some monsters in a dungeon while on a mining job, he obtains a sword called the Fang of Rakan, a weapon basically implanted with the essence of the Beast Monarch, and the sword agrees to join Suho under the condition that they seek out other sanctuaries made by Rakan. Why? Well, when they find another sanctuary in a field dungeon owned by the Hyena Guild, there's human trafficking going on there. What's actually important is that in this dungeon resides a creature that will change solo leveling world forever. Rakan's descendant, a baby wolf who is going to be the next Fang Monarch. You see, right before the OG solo leveling war ended, Rakan entrusted his offspring to a hyena called Brokey, ordering him to protect the young child at all costs. He did this for 2 reasons. 1, to continue on the legacy of the Fang Monarch, and 2, to ensure his family survived. But Brokey was eventually controlled by an apostle of Itrum and began to use the descendant's blood to gain power for himself, saying that he should be the next leader of the beasts. During this fight, the Fang of Rakan breaks, and in its last moments transfers its power to the wolf, transforming the baby into a full-grown beast with a ton of strength. It's here where the system first introduces the idea of partners with the monarch heirs, and so Suho takes the little guy on, defeating Brokey, and then gives him a name, Gray, because his fur is gray. Wow, amazing name. The most important thing about this contact between Shadow and Fang is their bond skill, where Gray is able to fuse with Suho, turning his eyes gold and his fur white, letting the young monarch use Gray's abilities. This is same for all the other descendants of monarchs Suho has under his party. Bro is basically collecting monarchs like Pokemon. I'm dead ass serious. Like, when I make that solo leveling Ragnarok explain video, I'll go deeper into all of this lore, but for now, let's leave it at that. But Gray is still a young pup right now, so while he isn't summoned by Suho, he's busy eating goblins and other creatures that wander in the Shadow Dungeon to become bigger and stronger to eventually fight against the Etrums. Meanwhile, Rakan isn't actually like dead. He exists in the Sea of the Afterlife, where whenever Suho uses a Beast Monarch related skill, Rakan can watch our boy. Honestly, all the monarchs do this. It's kind of like, if you've read Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, you know, whenever the constellations start yapping like, ooh, the Lord of the Golden Headband is smirking at whatever Kim Dokia did. It's basically the same thing. It's kind of funny. Finally, Suho and Rakan, they have a sort of contract where Suho takes care of Gray while gaining the authority to utilize the Beast Monarch's power. Suho also has access to the Iron Body Monarch Tarnak's power. He is the king of monstrous humans, and he is kind of full-on racist towards humanity, believing that Jinwoo wasn't fit to be the next Shadow Monarch just because he was human. And to make matters worse for this guy, he wasn't even killed by Jinwoo, but Beru, Bellion, and Thomas. Like, dude, stop yapping and just give up. You are not him.
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose.
To give him some credit though, his spiritual body manifestation is pretty cool, turning him into this iron giant with green flames. But yeah, falling victim to someone besides Jinwoo in this series where literally everyone else is kind of irrelevant is pretty funny. That's an accomplishment, low-key. That's an accomplishment in solo leveling, getting killed by anyone other than Jinwoo. Then after that, Tarnak decided he still needs some screen time in Ragnarok as we learn about his backstory. Now, I have to preface that Tarnak's lore in the manhwa for Ragnarok and the web novel are quite different. Suho, Esil, Gray, and Beru encounter a dude named Amut after they take on a quest to quell a dimensional rift leading to a dungeon in Egypt. And instead of buying property, they meet the chopped guilds Ashura and Scavenger fighting. It's here where they find a sealed away Amut who they mistake for the boss. In reality, this boss is what's keeping this dude sealed here, as Tarnak is a messed up motherfucker. You see, Amut used to be a normal humanoid, but Tarnak and Kandiaru performed countless experiments on him, constantly destroying and regenerating his body over and over again. It got to the point where Amut ripped out his own eyes and forced himself to transform his mentality to enjoy the pain. But when the Iron Body Monarch was done with him, he sealed his creation away in this dungeon. They do this by taking on the dungeon boss, Tomb Warden Sheikah. But even after he's destroyed, the chains binding Amut aren't destroyed. Luckily, they are still able to transfer him to the Shadow Dungeon, but unfortunately, while those chains are on him, he can't really leave. Later on in Ragnarok, Jinwoo shows up and he kind of helps Amut, but I think they're gonna change that lore now after the changes they made in the manhwa, so I'm not even gonna go in there. Despite this, Amut is grateful to Suho, as the Shadow Dungeon allows him to live out in the natural world like he used to as a child, which is all he ever wanted. And so he agrees to join the young monarch's party, while also giving Suho access to spiritual body manifestation. However, in the web novel, it is said that Amut is the one who created Tarnak. Tarnak was a weak goblin and became strong after learning spiritual body manifestation, but then spellcaster Kandiaru tricked Amut into being trapped inside the pyramid, where he would have to train unknowing humanoids into learning spiritual body manifestation, or to recreate another Tarnak, which Amut desperately wanted to also for the sake of science. Maybe not science, he was just kind of fucked up, not gonna lie, he was sadistic as Yet every human failed to pass his tests until Suho appeared and learned spiritual body manifestation, becoming the closest candidate to inheriting the Iron Body Monarch power. Honestly, I would go with the manhwa canon because that's the freshest, as in the web novel after this arc, no one ever really says or claims Suho is gonna become the Iron Body Monarch. The only one I remember is Queresha, the insect monarch, saying like, oh, are you the descendant of the Iron Body because you're a spiritual manifestation? But other than that, they kind of forget about it. Instead, Suho's friend is the one being trained up by Amut over and over again, so take that as you will. So next, I'm going to tell you guys one of the saddest stories of a god in solo leveling. His story really puts into perspective that the monarchs aren't really the bad guys we believe them to be. I'm talking about Sillad, the Frost Monarch. He's the king of the snowfolk, an elf with blue skin, long silver hair, and pure white eyes. Unlike some of the other monarchs, he actually doesn't really yearn for battle or hungers for the destruction of other lesser races. In fact, as callous as his design might seem, during the Jeju Island arc, he chose to knock out some humans he encountered instead of massacring them, which would have been easier if I'm being real here. So why would an evil monarch representing the dark aspects of the universe do this? Well, everything to Sillad is about the true ops being the Iterum race, and it all has to do with his backstory before becoming a monarch, which is explored in the Ragnarok novel. Sillad's rise to the title of Frost was not an immediate ascension, rather a transformation driven by survival and revenge for his people. He was originally an elf from the Elvenwood, an ancient civilization and dimension where the snowfolks and elves reside, until one day the great calamity happened. Unlike the seasons of Earth, the 4 seasons in this frost plane did not last a fixed period. Some seasons were brief, while others could last decades or even centuries. However, winter always arrived suddenly and without warning, bringing catastrophic consequences. When winter came, it was not just a change in weather, it was an event called the Year of Harvest. Basically, Elvenwood, the massive spirit tree and forest that supported the elves, was a double-edged sword. While it provided an optimal environment for them and made their spirit magic stronger, it absorbed all the nutrients from the land, and when the land became barren, the tree turned on its inhabitants. During the Year of the Harvest, Elvenwood captured and drained the elves, absorbing them as emergency food. Even the spirits abandoned them, siding with the tree instead of their former allies. Man, they should have just had some gamer subs ready, man. They could have used code ABD for 15% off and got some gamer subs. Thank God I have some gamer subs. Let me sip on that real quick. Whew, that is good. 50+ minute video, and that Ragnarok video is gonna be over an hour long. I'm like struggling here working on these videos for solo leveling. You guys can go buy some gamer subs, help support me so I can keep bringing these web novel, light novel videos, Anyway, Sillad, as an infant, experienced this firsthand. His mother tried to escape with him as the Elvenwood began its harvest, but she was caught by the tree's roots and drained of life. Sillad survived, but he lost everything. His mother's final words to him were literally, live. So he grew up in a new village that had fled from the calamity, but he never smiled, carrying the memory of his mother's death. Most elves accepted this cycle as inevitable. Even the ones who barely survived winter would just plant the seeds of Elvenwood in new lands, ensuring the next generation would fall victim to the same fate. It was just a way of life for the elves. And we see this with Sillad's best friend, Forz, who chose to flee the next calamity rather than fight. However, Sillad, being the Sigma he is, refused to be a little bitch. He was the only one who did not run away when the next cycle of winter came. Instead of accepting the fate of an elf, he embraced the cold itself through devouring the remains of the frozen Elvenwood and incorporating its essence into his body, which evolved him into the first Ice Elf. And after a while, the previous Monarch of Frost had just died in the Great War against the rulers. So the dark aspect of Frost ended up choosing Sillad, giving birth to a new monarch that rules the cold and the spirits. Even after ascending though, Sillad's hatred did not fade. He blamed Elvenwood for its weakness and sought to erase its legacy. Once he gained more power, he ordered the destruction of all remaining Elvenwood trees and led his new Ice Elf people into a harsher frozen existence. He could never yield to the forces that killed his mother. Sillad learned the truth of the universe, that everything him and his people had gone through for eons was all for the entertainment of this universe's absolute being. So he joined forces to uproot this accursed system of violence and despair, just like he uprooted the cycle of the Elvenwood for his people. However, during this war, he would inevitably be killed by the Shadow Monarch, who himself was protecting his home and people. This war against the rulers was devastating for the Ice Elves, and after Sillad's death, their entire race was threatened to extinction because all the capable fighters were being taken to the battlefield to fight. Every elf old enough to hold a bow was drafted. As a result, the only Ice Elves who survived were children, young ones, and a few remaining elders. This left the village without strong warriors to defend it, making them easy prey for other dangers, such as the Echo Forest Spirits, a powerful and malevolent force that had once remained isolated. Suddenly, it went on a rampage and attacked their village, which is most likely due to the new war occurring in outer space against the gods of other universes that Jinwoo is fighting. This further decimated their already weakened population. Most of the remaining adult Ice Elves were slaughtered, leaving behind only a handful of survivors, mostly young elves. Fortunately, Chahane was thrown into the Ice Elves' territory by accident while riding Kaisel. Though initially just trying to survive in this frozen land, she soon found herself involved in their plight. When the Echo Forest Spirits attacked, she single-handedly fought them off, saving the village. The Ice Elves, in all of her power, began calling her their savior and built ice sculptures in her honor. After the battle, she stayed with them and taught them swordsmanship, helping them become strong enough to defend themselves, being heralded as their new mother. Despite Chahane's help, the Ice Elves had lost much of their former power. Where once they had warriors who could rival A-class hunters, now even their strongest members barely reached B-class, with most being D or lower. Sillad, despite long dead, was aware of what had happened to his people. Seeing his proud race reduced to weak survivors who had to be protected by a human was deeply humiliating for him. However, over time his feelings changed from shame to gratitude for Jinwoo and his family, as he understood Jinwoo's circumstances were the same as his, that the true enemy are the Eatrums. Like if Chahane didn't spend 5 years helping the Ice Elves, Sillad would have likely killed Suho when he ventured into the Elvenwood during the Glacier Dungeon arc. Throughout the novel, Sillad is often used as a direct phone line between Suho and his mother. How is this possible? Well, Suho took one of Sillad's descendants, Sirka, into his party, and while she prayed, she could talk to Sillad, whom after dying was in the sea after death. This very descendant would then become the next Frost Monarch. Sirka was born an Ice Elf. Unlike Sillad though, who had to struggle against the cold to become the monarch, Sirka was born into it. For her, winter was not a threat, it was all she had ever known. Her strength was not immediately evident though, as she was still young and inexperienced. However, she had the potential to control the very spirits of the cold themselves, just like Sillad once did. Recognizing this spiritual control, Sillad chose Sirka as his rightful successor. Her true strength and power of the Frost Monarch was at full display against one of the strongest enemies in solo leveling Ragnarok, an apostle of the Eatrum known as the Apostle of Nightmares, which I'll discuss more about later on. This being sucked Sirka into his nightmare realm, having her fight the dark elf doppelganger of herself. This dark elf declared that Sirka was too weak to handle the power of the Frost Monarch. It wanted this ability for himself. As it poured down a stream of nightmares into Sirka, fanning her insecurities that she could couldn't take on the responsibilities chosen for her by her ancestor and Lord Sillad, it started to overwhelm her. She realized that this entity wanted to turn her into another version of the Elvenwood, a puppet which the Etrums can control against Jinwoo and Suho. Just when all seemed lost, a final ice arrow from the nightmare struck her leg, wounding her and making her escape nearly impossible. She was seconds away from losing herself completely, but then Sillad's voice called out to Sirka, reminding her of who she was and what she was fighting for, which gave her enough time to live until Sung Suho broke through the illusion and reached out to her. As Sirka grasped his hand, her connection to the Frost Monarch's power reignited. In her hands, the Ice Tree Spear materialized, its frosty light cutting through the darkness of the Apostle. The spear immediately amplified her control over the spirits of winter, allowing her to fight back against the nightmare corruption. With the Ice Tree Spear, Sirka no longer had to fight against winter. She became winter itself. Instead of being consumed by the spirits, she took control of them, freezing and absorbing them into her own power. Using her new spirit armor, she pummeled the Apostle of Nightmare into submission, wielding her spear as a hammer and shattering its form. With a final strike, Sirka completely silenced the nightmare and proved herself as the true Frost Monarch. Of course, Suho had to help completely defeat the Nightmare Apostle, but she helped. She became the monarch, similar to Esil, who became the next demon monarch only through the help of Suho. Sirka couldn't have done so without his encouragement and Suho nullifying the nightmare's power long enough for Sirka to wield the Frost Monarch's abilities. So she too has bowed down to Suho. Bro is collecting the monarch descendants like they are freaking Pokemon, okay? In fact, Suho has the Blessing of the Cold attribute, which gives him massive resistance to ice-based attacks and isn't even bothered by the cold. But the monarch, the exact opposite of cold, is Queresha, bad as hell, whose descendant Suho has already captured in his Master Ball. As you do. I'm talking about Queresha, the monarch of plagues and the queen of insects. Queresha started as a weak insect in a world of countless deadly bugs. She survived by consuming stronger creatures, absorbing their abilities and poisons, and gradually evolving. As time went on, she became the apex predator of that dimension and claimed the title of Queen of Insects. Her entire body and soul were composed of thousands of bugs, making her both one and a colony. Due to this history, Queresha is one of the more bloodthirsty monarchs. She lived to kill and savor every opportunity she got to slaughter her prey. Yet at the same time, she had an almost motherly attitude towards her minions, regarding them as her own children and possessions. She was one of the 3 monarchs that killed Christopher Reed, and also went to fight Jinwoo during the Monarch War before he was even at full strength, and wanted to use this opportunity to eliminate him, which is where we get to see the full extent of her abilities. She was strong enough to restrain Beru with her bare hands and is able to reanimate the dead using parasites, sort of like Jinwoo and the Shadow Arm. But her regenerative skills are easily some of the most impressive among the monarchs, being able to regenerate her entire body in a matter of seconds after Jinwoo cut her in half. This is due to her being a culmination of all the insects in her dimension, basically known as the Immortal Swarm. But this does seem to have limits or a cooldown, as she was unable to do it a second time and was reduced to nothing. I'd argue the insect monarch's specialty is her ability to use an extremely potent toxin or venom created from her parasitic body. During her fight with Jinwoo, she got so preoccupied with making Beru surrender to her that it left the perfect opportunity for Jinwoo to sneak up from behind and gain the advantage. So she used the venom as a last-ditch effort, but to her surprise, it had no effect on the new Shadow Monarch. If it was anyone else, it was game over on the spot. This miscalculation led to her activating her ruler's authority as a last resort, but even that had nothing on Jinwoo, and so she accepted her fate and dissolved into dust. However, if Jinwoo didn't have Kandiaru's blessing, she would have caused him a bit more trouble. After her death, her dimension fell into chaos with various insects fighting for dominance. Many of her followers tried to resurrect her or claim her power, including Queen Bee Arsha. Unlike Queresha, who ruled by strength, Arsha was a strategist that valued patience and infiltration. Arsha believed she was the only worthy successor, but as as her world collapsed into dimensional rifts due to the Great Eatrum War, through a strange fate, she fell into Earth's dimension, where she bided her time, plotting her rise to power. However, she didn't have the strength to go up against the strongest S-rankers quite yet, so she blended into human society, taking on human form as she saw humanity as similar to insects, where the most vicious would ultimately rise to the top and rule. So she opened a VIP bar where she would poison politicians, the rich, and hunters with a substance called royal jelly, slowly turning them into worker bees who would be under her control. One such worker bee would be the A-class hunter Lee Min-sung, who was jealous of his longtime friend and driver Lim Tae-gyu awakening as an S-ranker, so he was busy using the Eatrum Stardust to strengthen himself. But when he bit off more than he could chew, Suho was after him. He went crying to Arsha, who could arrange an escape route for him from the country. However, this is where like the manhwa and the novel kind of differs, where Arsha isn't really in the manhwa, and like this whole Lee Min-sung arc is kind of completely different if we're being real. So this whole video I'm gonna be talking more about the novel canon, so just keep that in mind. But before Lee Min-sung could leave the country, Arsha invoked her royal jelly manipulation, which brought him completely under her control. Her plan was to use Lee Min-sung and his A-rank influence to recruit more high-ranking workers. So Suho tracks down Arsha, whoops her ass, because bro is immune to poison due to Kandiaru's blessing, but all of a sudden, Suho gets dragged into the realm of eternal rest because Arsha had been sacrificing humans to start the successor trial so she can become the next insect monarch. Bro, how did this dumb ass bee who is scared of a mere S-ranker think she could be Get out, bro, get out. Luckily for her, Suho possessed a part of Queresha's power through Kandiaru's blessing, which dragged him into the realm of Eternal's Rest, where boss music started and Suho would have to battle Queresha herself. Queresha launched an endless swarm of her insect army, attempting to consume Suho's body and mind in a test of survival. The battle was framed as an urgent quest, Queresha's Solitude, where Suho had to survive for 4 hours against this swarm. She underestimated Suho, thinking he would panic, but Suho remained completely nonchalant. Why? Because Suho had inherited multiple monarchs' abilities, including Iron Body Manifestation from the Iron Body Monarch, the Blessing of the Fang Monarch, and his father's Shadow. Seeing Suho's power, Queresha was completely caught off guard. Instead of just fighting the insects, Suho did something insane. Bro started eating them! This was due to Rakan's advice of eat rather than be eaten. Suho later took it literally and started devouring Queresha's whole body because she's made of insects, right? This infuriated Queresha, but it slowly started to weaken her, who was already nerfed heavily in this realm. This strategy ultimately led to Suho gaining the title Natural Enemy of Insects, giving him a 40% stat boost against bug-type monsters. After completely breaking her will, Queresha was forced to acknowledge Suho, prompting a system message to appear stating that Queresha's Pontifex or High Priest had been extorted by Suho. This granted Suho control over remnants of Queresha's power, though not enough to fully inherit her title. Also, this Pontifex title is similar to how the Eatrum's apostles create their High Priests, giving a portion of their power to the ones who are worthy, basically. And you can look at these apostles on the same caliber or ranking, not in terms of power, but in terms of their role as the monarchs and rulers of Jinwoo's universe. Because first you have the Eatrums at the top, and then the Eatrums create the apostles, and similar to in Jinwoo's universe, the absolute being of his universe first created his apostles, who are the rulers and the monarchs. Anyway, just wanted to reiterate that so you guys don't get confused. Currently though, Queen Bee Arsha has become a valuable ally of Suho's as she lives in the Shadow Dungeon permanently, serving as Suho's recon drone that sends out bees for scouting purposes. But just as Jinwoo has led Amut towards the path of becoming the next Iron Body Monarch in the novel, Arsha is likely to inherit the Insect Monarch throne as well. But like for real though, Queresha in front of you, giving you that insect jelly. Do you take it? Do you take it? Don't lie, don't lie. Honestly, I would in a heartbeat take that jelly.
Go goon somewhere else. Let me take over. Next up is the Monarch of Transfiguration and King of Demonic Specters, Yogumont. Yogumont? I don't know.
We don't care.
Let me tell you something. We don't care.
He is one of the most powerful monarchs in solo leveling, as unlike the others, who focus normally on brute strength or even use magic in battle, Yogumont's strength is focused on illusions, deception, and transformation. Using these powers, he played a critical role in the war between the rulers and monarchs by corrupting and even controlling enemy forces of angels or spirits to his advantage. Ashborn saw the threat he posed, and so the Shadow Monarch hunted him down as one of his top priorities. He was so utterly exterminated that not even his soul remains in the realm of eternal rest. In the OG timeline, bro was so nerfed that Jinwoo was using his Dragon Sphere ability to immobilize him along with Anteres' entire army. But in Ragnarok, we learn that Kandiaru, or the architect of the level up system, is from the same race as the Monarch of Transfiguration. In fact, if Kandiaru wasn't so obsessed with immortality, there is a possibility he had the knowledge and power to even usurp Yogumont and become the monarch himself. There's also a theory that Kandiaru's experiments, like the dungeons he's created, may have been influenced by Yogumont's own magic. Suho eventually ends up fighting against a demonic specter named Javier, who can create lifelike illusions of the strongest beings from one's memories to either psychologically damage you or straight up try to beat you with your greatest fear, which makes me wonder if this was all part of Yogumont's arsenal too. Like, this power was strong enough to bring out an illusion of Jinwoo himself off of Suho's memories. Sadly for Javier though, turns out even an illusion of the goat himself is still technically part of the Shadow Monarch's consciousness. Even through the dimensional rifts of countless universes, Jinwoo's aura took control and showed Javier who Suho's daddy is. Honestly, he's my daddy too, but we don't need to talk about that. So, Yogumont, no one cares about him, so let's move on to someone who was born to actually aura farm. The leader of all the monarchs and the final villain of solo leveling himself, Anteres, the Monarch of Destruction and King of Dragons. Anteres was one of the original monarchs, powerful beings born from the primordial darkness to wage war against the rulers. And as the King of Dragons, he commanded an army of fearsome beasts, becoming the embodiment of destruction itself. Unlike some of the other monarchs, Anteres was a battle maniac, reveling in endless conflict, caring little for alliances and respecting only power. The war between the monarchs and the rulers raged for eons, with neither side achieving total victory. It was like whenever one side was winning, the other side got a stat buff, and then they just went back to clashing like in any online game. In fact, Anteres was one of the first beings to realize the corrupt nature of the absolute being. However, his battle-crazed, destructive nature and the distinct difference between the monarchs and rulers just wouldn't let the war stop. After Ashborn joined the monarchs, Anteres started to grow fearful about his powers, and was the one who actually ordered Rakan and Baran to fight him in the first place. But as we all know, this resulted in not only Baran's death, but Rakan's retreat, resulting in Ashborn leaving the war and the rulers claiming total victory. It wasn't until much later when Anteres reunited with Ashborn, who asked if he could rejoin their forces. And with Baran and Legia both lost, naturally Anteres was like, hell yes, come over now, like we need you. When the second war initially took place, Anteres was the only monarch who was unable to find a suitable human vessel, similar to Ashborn, meaning that while the others were able to travel between the two worlds basically whenever they wanted, Ashborn was forced to remain behind until the conditions were right for him to be able to cross over into Earth. He reveled in the destruction he caused with his powers, and due to him being unparalleled in strength, he naturally behaved in a casual and confident manner. One of his stats is beating Jinwoo in physical strength, as he easily held his own against the Shadow Lord. He also possessed abilities like shapeshifting, telepathy, and Dragon Sphere, a mana-infused shout from his soul that would drive those weaker than him into total despair. But Anteres' main skill is Breath of Destruction, an attack so powerful it would reduce the average S-rank hunter to ash, negate Jinwoo's attacks, and permanently destroy any shadow soldier that got in the way. On top of that, he was a master of fire magic, with the flames being so powerful that they could create massive explosions just by summoning a few streams of fire from his fingers and slashing them with his claws. Anteres is also able to transform into a giant red dragon and a human dragon hybrid, which makes sense because he's the king of dragons. To be honest, what makes Anteres stand out to me isn't his insane power level, but his personality, as unlike some of his fellow monarchs, Anteres did possess a sense of honor support and was even willing to negotiate with those he found impressive, like when he promised Jinwoo that he would withdraw all of his forces and spare humanity if Jinwoo agreed to fight with him against the rulers. This man becomes a certified Jinwoo simp later on in Ragnarok 2. As being killed by the man in not one but two different timelines, he realizes that he's him. I mean, he even agreed to come back to life in exchange for helping Jinwoo's son, Suho, to become the next Monarch of Destruction. With the monarchs exterminated and the war seemingly over, Anteres disappeared into the abyss of death, trapped in a formless afterlife where he can no longer fight a fate worse than death for someone who lived for war. Despite his destruction though, Jinwoo chose to bring Anteres back, but in a vastly different form. Knowing Anteres' insane thirst for battle, he offered him a second chance, but with a catch. He would be reincarnated inside the body of a newly hatched dragon, Ragnar, who was another one of Suho's pets. At first, Anteres was furious, but he soon saw this as an opportunity that he didn't have in his previous life. He'd already reached the peak of his power, leveling him with no room to grow. Now in the body of a young dragon, he could actually start over from scratch and grow even stronger. However, his lack of mana in this new form meant that he was frequently incapacitated, requiring Suho's assistance to function properly. Despite his limitations, Anteres continued training Suho as the next Monarch of Destruction because the amount of hacks this kid already had, plus his father's shadows, he was like, this guy's great, like he could be his new legacy. And so teaching him how to wield the powers of destruction was definitely something he wanted. However, Suho wasn't just handed all of this. He had to earn the monarch's favor in the most grueling fashion by withstanding the first trial of destruction where Suho nearly died. It happened during the battle against the priest of the apostles, Sidharv Pachan. Oh my god, that was so I fucked that up so bad. The Indian S-rank hunter who took the deal of power and corruption given to him by the apostles. A priest is similar to how currently Suho is able to take the abilities of like Rakan and Queresha, where they can borrow the apostles' power. In this fight, it was quite clear that Suho was easily outmatched against the national level hunter's Iterum infused astral weapon, and if things couldn't get any worse, Bro received a notification that he met the conditions for the Dragon King's trial, which was the first step to him becoming the Monarch of Destruction. Now, this battle wasn't just about raw strength. Suho had to adapt mid-fight, controlling the flames of destruction which were burning him relentlessly, a searing pain enveloping every cell in his body. But being the spawn of Jinwoo, he didn't give up, instead using these flames of destruction to his advantage, as he grabbed onto Sidharv, spreading the flames onto him, killing him and spilling his doom. Defeating this national level hunter leveled up Suho to a point where he could actually tame the Dragon King's heart and be able to wield destruction flames. Suho would have another trial while fighting the Monarch of White Flames, but Sid already explained that battle, so I'm not going to dive deeper into that one. Meanwhile, Anteres exists in this strange dual state. He's both the newborn dragon Ragnar and an ancient spirit of destruction, bound to Suho. His goals remain entirely the same, to regain his strength and fight once more, reveling in the destruction he caused. A monarch though we haven't seen really at all, even through Ragnarok as part of his race, is Legia the Giant. A monarch we haven't seen at all, not even one of his race in Ragnarok, is Legia the Giant, Monarch of Beginnings. He was the hidden boss of the Tokyo Crisis S-rank dungeon. Low-key though, bro wasn't even a giant if we're being real here. He was only twice the size of an average human. Like, final form LeBron is bigger than him, bro. However, his history is massive, as during the original war between the two forces, Legia was captured sometime after the Absolute Being's murder. His chains absorbed mana, so he was stuck there for eons. And while he was imprisoned, the giant race dwindled. But even after being captured, Legia was used like a tool by the rulers, as in order to reinforce their plan of filling Earth with mana, they implemented an essence stone inside the back of Legia's neck. This turned him into a bloodlusted monster towards humanity, making him kill humans and saturate the world with vast amounts of mana in the process. It wouldn't be until the Tokyo Crisis arc where Legia comes face to face with Jinwoo, who attempted to trick him with the idea of an alliance in exchange for his freedom. He even offered to fight alongside Jinwoo in the coming war, and even lined the two of them in a spell so they couldn't allow each other to lie. He also explained he wasn't able to become a shadow soldier because he was a spiritual life form, which lacked an an organic body. But Jinwoo didn't believe a single thing this man was talking about after discovering the Essence Stone on his neck's back, leading to a fight. Well, not really. He beat him in a single strike. The best attack this dude had was his built-in lie detector, and he's supposed to be the king of giants. Yet in solo leveling Ragnarok, Legia's story is more somber, as he is believed to have been utterly killed and destroyed by Ashborn himself during the ancient war of the rulers and monarchs. And unlike the other monarchs who have descendants that are able to carry on the monarch's primordial darkness, Legia's descendants haven't appeared yet, which looks even more unlikely as we're moving towards the true war against the Interims and Apostles in the latest chapters. But you know what, we've been yapping about monarchs for way too long, so let's talk about the other side of the ancient war, aka the gods that are the aspects of light, the rulers. Unlike the monarchs, we actually don't know them as individuals and more so a collective force. Like we said throughout the video, these guys were able to kill the absolute being and ultimately win the first monarch ruler war. And when they were absolutely useless in stopping the monarch's invasion of Earth, they used the Cup of Reincarnation to reset time back 10 years. However, this really didn't do much, as it seemed like humanity's destruction was always inevitable. To make matters worse, the Cup of Reincarnation was starting to run out of power, and once it did, humanity, well, they'd be cooked. In a desperate last attempt, the rulers used its power one more time, but instead of sitting around and letting things happen, they actually decided to be smart. They gave humanity a fighting chance, spawning in gates with magic beasts, as well as saturating the earth with mana, leading to the creation of hunters. They also chose 7 highly skilled hunters to serve as vessels for their power. This is the biggest difference between the monarchs and rulers when it comes to vessels, as monarchs just kind of possess someone, whereas the rulers just kind of give them full reign over their abilities, meaning that even if a vessel kicks the bucket, the rulers themselves are still alive. The biggest problem though is that the vessels can't handle their full power, with the only exception to this rule being Jinwoo and Ashborn, as bro went through a whole training arc to withstand the aura. Their vessels are Thomas Andre, Leo Jigong, Christopher Reed, Siddharth Bachchan, Gogun Hee, and Jonas. But if you guys want to know more about those guys, then I would just go recommend checking out the all S-rank hunters video. During the final battle against Anteres, Jinwoo was able to use Thomas Andre and Leo Jigong as a means to make contact with the rulers, and they created a plan to end the war once and for all. The plan was solely based on the idea that Anteres didn't know the new Shadow Monarch was in cahoots with the enemy. Using that to his advantage, Jinwoo made contact with the Dragon Monarch, using their battle to distort the space around them in order for the rulers to materialize on Earth. Or I guess, and not in the flesh, because they're technically spirits, so they really aren't organic. Whatever, it doesn't matter. God, I need to really stop yapping. The rulers then proceeded to stab Anteres with spears in every direction, killing him. And after the war was over, Jinwoo requested to use the Cup of Reincarnation just one more time to undo all of Earth's destruction, so he alone could fight the monarchs with just himself and the Shadow Army, allowing humanity and all the people he cares about to live normal lives. And because these guys were pretty much indebted to this man over a war that took place over countless millenniums, they obviously were gonna take the deal. However, the war wasn't over, because the Interims started to invade the universe. After the Monarch War, the rulers saw Jinwoo and his Shadow Army as essential to keeping balance in the universe. Now, the rulers are still active in the war against the Interims, but they're in a much weakened state. Their forces are dwindling, and they can no longer create new warriors. This makes them heavily dependent on Sung Jinwoo and his Shadow Army, who remain immortal, plus he can add forces of the Interims to his army as well. The rulers are cautious about Suho though, due to his decision to inherit the powers of their biggest op, Anteres. Some of them fear that Suho may become a threat rather than an ally. Currently, one of the main missions Suho is undertaking is to find the World Tree to heal his grandpa and the humans corrupted by the Interims' mana. However, Suho finding the tree would also help his father's war effort, as if they find it, they can produce new angels using the concentrated power of their universe's Interim, which resides in the World Tree, aka the Absolute Being. And in the latest chapter of the novel, it seems like Suho is right around the corner to finding it. And oh boy, do they need all the help they can get, because the Idarims aren't playing around. Like I said, these dudes created all of existence and exist in their own outer dimensions. Just like the absolute being, they were so bored, they literally conditioned their creations to fight each other in order to just get some entertainment. After Jinwoo soloed the monarchs in the new timeline, they discovered that one of their own had actually been killed by the rulers, and so they began to observe the world he designed since it no longer had a master. Using his death as a chance to conquer the absolute being's world and power for themselves, the Idarims sought to claim the vast amounts of mana and resources that were in that universe. While Jinwoo and the rulers were able to stop a full-on assault, some of the Idarims' underlings, known as the Apostles, were able to slip through to Earth. While possessing a ton of magic power, the Apostles are actually weaker than the rulers and monarchs. And just like the latter, they can take complete control of a human vessel. The only issue is they can't take control of a body until given consent, meaning most of the time these guys have to use some emotional manipulation to get what they want. The reason for them being weaker though is that other Idarims have different ways of splitting their power. While Jinwoo's absolute being chose to have 7 monarchs and 7 rulers, the outer gods instead chose millions of pawns or thousands. Furthermore, their power gets fragmented as they fall into Earth. One of the first glimpses of an apostle we witness is the one that possesses Thomas Andre. Now there is TL from the manhwa, but I don't really want to get into that canon in this video right now. They're 2 different canons, so we're just gonna go over the light novel one. The apostle who possesses Thomas Andre seems to be one of the stronger ones, with blue wings and immense strength. Thomas, being the strongest hunter in the world and one with an indomitable will, was actually able to resist this possession due to Suho coming in clutch with the Echo Forest's Spring of Purification, which gets rid of the outer god's mana corruption. After winning this mental tussle, Thomas absolutely embarrasses the apostle, coming out with not only a W, but also realizing he can get back his national level hunter powers as he absorbs the apostle's mana. Second, we have the Apostle of the Mad Tyrant. This apostle possessed Christopher Reed, a former rank 3 national level hunter, and turned him into the priest of the Idarims. He was part of a scheme to strengthen former top hunters by making them puppets of the apostles using a religious organization called the Outer Gods Cult. However, after learning about this, an awakened Thomas Andre quickly fought him and killed him. Third, we have the Apostle of Paradise, who was sent to Earth to transform it into a paradise for the Idarims by altering the environments and corrupting its inhabitants. He arrived on Earth in a meteorite, which had been fragments of his power. He was going around planting elverwood all around the Earth, which sucks all life out of the environments, making it perfectly habitable for the Idarims. However, my guy was trying to turn Yangpyeong, the home of Jinwoo's parents and sister's hospital, into his base. He would also use abandoned orphans as fuel for his project. However, Suho, his grandpa and mother, show up and beat this fool to oblivion. One breath of destruction and all of Bro's corrupted land, it's cooked, it's gone. The final blow was delivered by Cha Ha-ain, as she uses her storm of white flames to slice this fool in half, while Grandpa Huan countered the apostle's dimensional abilities so he couldn't escape. But even still, with 2 top tier S-rankers and Suho fighting, this rat somehow managed to slip past them. But fear not, as Liu Zhigong ambushed him and ate his spirit for lunch, which massively boosted the former second strongest hunter's own powers. However, there is also a human side to these apostles as well, as we learn through the Paradise's relationship with Russia's strongest hunter and their dictator Yuri Orlov. You see, Yuri was an orphan, which made the apostle feel an odd sense of kinship with him, because the apostle's own parents are the Idarims, who really only saw them as pawns and demanded absolute obedience, never feeling the warm embrace of a parent, just like an orphan. They worked together to spread the Outer Gods' influence in Russia, creating flower pots in every city, and slowly moved their operation to North Korea, which had turned into a country-sized dungeon where some other Outer Apostles had made their bases. One of them would be the Apostle of Evolution. He is by far the most unique and terrifying apostle of all of them, because his goal was not simply destruction or conquest, but experimentation and forced evolution. Unlike other apostles who focused on battle, he was obsessed with achieving immortality and replicating the powers of the Shadow Monarch. His first goal was to find a suitable vessel, but he encountered a problem. Human bodies were way too weak to contain his essence. Many humans died instantly when he tried to take control of them, but he eventually found a solution, possessing a recently deceased old man, reviving him in what seemed like a miracle resurrection. This event led to the birth of the foreign religion cult, as people believed he was some sort of divine being or god. He conducted experiments on humans, attempting to make them immortal but failed to create souls, only lifeless husks. The reason for this observation hints at a deeper transformation taking place in the multiverse influenced by Jinwoo and his universe. The Apostle of Evolution was not just another follower of the Outer Gods. He questioned his own creator and sought to surpass even the divine beings that made him. His internal struggle revolved around his belief that true evolution should not have limits, and if gods themselves could die, then they were not truly gods. If the Itterims he worshipped were so divine, then how could someone from their race die, like the absolute being? And that's the kind of reason for this video being titled All Gods in Solo Leveling, because in reality there are no gods introduced. There are these beings who can be seen as gods, but when you really zoom into their dedicated realms of power, but even the absolute being's authority only reached as far as his own pocket dimensions. Hence the Apostle of Evolution became obsessed with the Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, after seeing his immortal army. Instead of seeing Jinwoo as an enemy, the Apostle saw him as the pinnacle of evolution, as a being who could create an army that never truly died. This idea directly conflicted with the teachings of the Outer Gods, who believed in controlling and sacrificing their servants rather than making them immortal. From that moment, he began his secret experiments, attempting to replicate the Shadow Monarch's powers. As he experimented and grew stronger, the Apostle of Evolution began to believe that he himself could evolve beyond the Outer Gods, and for the first time, he saw himself not as a mere servant, but as something greater. He no longer wanted to serve his masters, he wanted to replace them. Rather than offering his discoveries about the monarchs and rulers to his masters, the Apostle secretly planned to claim the power of the fallen monarchs for himself. This was honestly blasphemy of the highest order, but his ambition outgrew his faith. Eventually, his experiments led to the creation of Number 47, a humanoid weapon that could regenerate but lacked a soul. He also distributed failed weapons to various individuals, including Wu Chin-chol, without them realizing the true origin of them. Suho also tracked down the Apostle of Evolution while he was in North Korea and discovered that his real body was just a brain inside of a test tube. The Apostle, fascinated by Suho's abilities, revealed his experiments and his ultimate goal to create a true immortal army like Jinwoo. Suho realized that this Apostle had lived far too long. His research would eventually succeed, making him a dangerous future enemy. So in response, the young lord destroyed the Apostle's illusions and attacked his real body. The Apostle, unfazed by his impending death, revealed that his final experiment was already complete, hinting at an even greater threat to come. Suho destroyed the Apostle's original brain, but his essence transferred into new form, the Apostle of Nightmare. Now, instead of focusing on science, his new ability allowed him to turn reality into a nightmare, merging dreams with the physical world. Okay, so I just gotta pause for a second. Really? Like, Apostle of Nightmare? Bro is literally just trying to be the Shadow Monarch at this point. However, if we actually go back to his stats, in this state, physical and magical attacks have no effect on him, making him essentially invincible. Even Baru was helpless against the Apostle's Nightmare realm. The Apostle of Nightmare infiltrated Sirka's dream, trying to steal the power of the Lord of Frost, as Sid mentioned earlier. However, Suho entered the Nightmare realm, interrupting the Apostle's plan. The Apostle believed that in this nightmare world, Suho would be powerless. He demonstrated complete control over the environment, summoning void sharks, creatures that devoured everything in the abyss. Suho reminded him of a critical mistake, that what he ruled was nightmare, not darkness, because it isn't his to control. Using his daddy's shadow realm, Suho erased the Apostle's control over the nightmare world, revealing that darkness belongs to him Wu alone. With his nightmare realm collapsing, the Apostle attempted to flee, but was cornered by Suho and Baru. Suho revealed that the Apostle's final experiment, his ultimate weapon, was already failing, proving that he had failed to surpass the Shadow Monarch. In the end, Baru consumed the Apostle's remaining brain, effectively erasing him forever. And that's everything we know about solo leveling and all the different deities and gods in the universe. If you enjoyed this, then watch the video on screen right now about the real god of the multiverse, Sung Him Woo, and how strong he is.